the head of the whole thing is a friend of mine, Marian Goodell, and she told me 4 years in a row that, Tamás, you need to come and you need to see this because this is humanity in action. And I explained to her that this is not real, that I don't believe it. There's a selection bias, and I don't want to go. And then 1 year I was working on inequality regulating institutions. In a way, gender. So the gender book came out of that research as well. And then, okay, this is the time. Maybe I'll go to Burning Man and have a look at the inequality regulating institutions. And then I learned about something completely different, which rewired my science entirely.
Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Živile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox, and today I'm very excited to speak with Dr. Tamás Dávid-Barrett, who is an evolutionary behavioral scientist. His research delves into the intricate dynamics of social networks, particularly during periods of falling fertility, urbanization, and migration. And recently he has just published a book, which is a groundbreaking, and it's called Gendered Species, A Natural History of Patriarchy, and it thus investigates the complex evolution of gender norms, revealing how patriarchy has emerged repeatedly throughout history, despite a baseline of gender harmony in our species. So today it's all about actually diving into the gender norms, climate, technology, and the future of gender relations. So yeah, I guess let's wait no more and dive into this episode.
I get reminded that this technology dependence that we have is madness.
It is, right?
It's just not natural at all.
Last year and a half I went to Africa. Do you know Burning Man?
I just came from...
No! So I went to Africa Burn, and welcome back, by the way. And it was my first bigger burn, and I went alone to Africa because it was on the way to the wedding in Brazil from Singapore, whatever it is. And I just knew that I have to go there. And
Nice.
I found myself last-minute ticket. I've got myself the last minute into an incredible one of the oldest Africa Burn camps that helps artists to build the exhibitions and their pieces and to spread the message. So I came to apply a few days before it opened up for everyone, almost a week actually before. And I remember it's not that about I'm dependent okay, we're all dependent on technology, but it's not that I cannot live without my phone, but it's an essential part of our lives. But for me, the most difficult part was that we are so codependent online of our networks that I was like, it took me 3 days to fully disconnect without a message. Oh, how I'm going to message my family? Because we have a daily communication. I'm always on the road. And I was like, but we are not aware now that I'm here and I'm okay. I'm in this Africa desert, 6 hours away from Cape Town. And I've realized that was just my kind of concern and fear. And for them, it was, oh, you told us you're going to Africa. It's okay, cool, enjoy.
Yeah. I love that the lack of internet communication in a city of 85,000 means that we need to rethink our time concept. Playa time, everybody knows what a playa time is, which means that you don't really make plans.
No.
Just, take whatever is happening, and something's gonna happen, and you are on playa time. I don't think I have come back from playa time, really, in many ways. This was an amazing burn.
Yeah.
I always go to work. This was my third time, and I always go as an anthropologist. And my friends told me that I should at one point go as myself, and I ended up accidentally spending 2.5 days as myself. It was amazing.
How was it different? Like, what changed?
I let it go.
That's beautiful.
I mean, I went there to write. I'm working on a new book, and I went there to write a subchapter on hatred. or more the lack of hatred.
Okay.
So a lot of people think that the only way to pull a society together is via creating a shared enemy. And othering and enemy creation is a very, very effective social technology. It is true. But it's not necessary. And every time I talk about this and try to convince somebody, they say, what is the scientific evidence? And the scientific evidence I bring is always about babies, showing that babies, because, with babies, they just came out of the egg, So if you can see what their expectations are, you can actually know what is inherited, which bit of this social behavior is inherited in us. And what you see is that babies expect in-group support, but they do not expect out-group hindrance. In other words, in a hippie way to put it, we're born to love and only learn to hate.
Mhm.
And then I show the evidence, and then people will listen, say, okay, there's babies, and that's it. How about that? And Burning Man is a great example because the main burn, the Nevada desert, camps are somewhere between 30 and 200 members around. Some are very few bigger, but they stop being real camps in a way. And they form a city of 85,000. And there's never othering. There hasn't been, in 35 years, there hasn't been a single case of enemy creation among the camps. Sometimes there is a territorial conflict. So one year, the org, I think probably for fun, put the swingers and the polycamp next to each other.
Did they?
Which people who don't know what this is, they think they're the same. They're like the opposite end. They had a territorial conflict.
Okay, that's
But there was no
interesting.
othering. Yeah. So anyways, this is why I went. And then I ended up doing something else. And then I ended having some time at the end, and that was my free time. Sorry, this is a very long ramble, but it's
That's
not.
amazing. I'm very happy to hear that. I think it's very special. Especially, it seems like what you do, you live what you do what you live, kind of
Yeah, I mean,
with all the
spot
signs.
observation.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm very, very glad. I think when we manage to free ourselves of predefined roles we have and we carry in the society,
Yeah,
it opens up a lot to a
yeah,
world.
yeah.
It's of course kudos for being so brave. You mentioned that so you went to a Burning Man also with your research purpose to see how people more like I assume more spread love. We're all together there. There is less hate. But do you think it only happens in some kind of set up environments where people come with this right intention? And can we apply that outside the close communities? The spreading less hate, more love.
So I think what's happening is that, I mean, so the Marian, the head of it, thinks of this as an educational institution. Burning Man is an educational institution. So I think what's happening is that in these camps, somehow the culture evolved in this direction, and then the principles now, officially 10 principles, I think really 12, because there's an additional 2 hidden principles. So the way it evolved is that in the camp itself, we have our natural social behavior. We are an extremely social ape species, and we have a lot of inherited behaviors that end up, if they're allowed to happen, end up in a healthy community. I think that is the camp. The typical Burning Man camp is a healthy human community, a healthy human ape community. And somehow the camp of camps, the whole of a Burning Man event, somehow managed using generalized gifting, which bonds everybody towards a bigger project, the elimination of competition and the exchange ideology, no money, no commodities, radical self-reliance, and inclusion. So all of these, together with the institutions that are necessary for any large society, the rangers, the hospital, the lost and found, all of these together. There's a fire brigade. All the elements that a city of 85,000 will need to have are present. And it's, in a way, this is an island, as you said, this is an island in this ocean of exchange ideology. So here at Trinity, I teach economics. Economics is an exchange ideology. If you teach it well, and I try to do that, it's more of a toolbox that can help people better, but it's also something that's full of, our societies out there, are full of this. And my question, so this week, actually, that week, the entire time I was thinking, when I ended up working with a TV crew, and so their question was, why does it work? And I ended up thinking about, okay, so could we turn it around? What would be the way to turn it around that you have the normal behavior as the ocean and using competition as a method towards more efficient allocation, that is the market, as the islands, to do an inside out? I think that's if you put the question that way, then we can start asking the questions. Here, my first years are about to arrive, and the first question I give them is, they arrive, the Freshers Week, they are very, very smart, 18-year-olds, 17 to 19-year-olds. And so they get on the Freshers Week, Wednesday, get a message from me, an email. Could please next Wednesday, 5 p.m., so 1 week later, write an exactly 1,500-word essay on whether the gift economy of Burning Man could be a general system for all. And these kids like Bambi in the headlight. What just happened? And then come a range of answers. Some will say Burning Man is not real. It's fake. It's a lie. Mm-hmm. Which what I thought before I went for the first time 8 years ago. Because it's not true. It's not a lie. It's real. Yeah. And the second set of answers is that it's only for a week, and people arrive with their food and their stuff, and it costs money. And then some of them tells me, actually, part of the global society, part of the global economy is already working like this. Because what is happening is that if you take up, your phone, where's my phone? Here. And on my phone, of course, the phone costs some money, so that's, on my phone, there is there's this view. And Wikipedia is already essentially a plier, a knowledge plier. People give for free. It's freely available as long as you have the basic tools. So and it's global. And this minute, this is the world's humanities, and as far as we know, the universe's largest accumulated collection of knowledge. And a minute ago was the second largest. Mm-hmm. So Burning Man, I think, but what you ask is the most important question. Burning Man as an alternative society is a utopia that might actually work. Okay. Yeah? What did you think of it?
It's always kind of questioning. It felt when I went to Africa Burn, which is for the ones who don't know Playa, it's a place, it's the center of Burning Man where everything happens and everyone has its own district. Africa Burn follows the same principles. It's a bit smaller, 10,000 people. First of all, I thought wow, it's too good to be true. I just knew that I wanted to go there to experience and to open up myself to whatever happens there. So I've got to know this, just you don't plan anything, things happen to you, what has to happen. And I was questioning myself as well, can we actually apply these principles into, let's say, real society and real world? And for me, reintegration, coming back after spending almost 2 weeks in the desert, was a bit challenging because it felt so real and so true with the values that and behaviors that are happening there, that I thought, okay, how can I bring some part of it to, let's call this real economical society where everyone is very capitalistic, focused on making money and making their way through one way or another, depends on which country we are. So I'm not sure if it's possible fully to implement that on the large scale. In the smaller communities, yes, and what I've noticed that we are started going into smaller communities based on the field of interest and trying to kind of create those bubbles. And that's why I'm curious if it could be done in the large scale. So that was for me complicated, but I think some principles can be applied, and if everyone would just be more self-reliant, not dependent on someone else, someone would be more on the approach to give and to gift rather than just take, already the world would be way a better place.
I mean, I think there are, the key in a way, there are several keys. One key is that this is the camp itself. So the structure is in a way the most important. Because a camp is where we are in our natural behavior.
Mm-hmm.
In the camp, you almost don't need the principles. Then the principles, together with the institutions, allow building up 85,000. And actually, you know what? I'm not sure if I see any theoretical reason why, if you can go up from camps of the size to 30 to 200, if you can go up to 85,000, I can't see a theoretical reason why you couldn't go up to 8.
Fine.
Yeah. So this is a tradition, a society, a culture that gives a lot of pleasure to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think seeing your face, I think, gave pleasure to you and definitely gave pleasure to me. But also something that proves the doability, the viability of this. And you know, I mean, of course, some parts of our world will be the market economy, very clearly. But a lot of people spend a lot of time. So if you are on the temple crew, they're probably going to be on 2 months, 6 weeks, 2 months in the deserts out of 12 months. Yeah.
It's insane.
And, you know, that's already not 9 days. And of course, you need to earn money. And so what is the ocean and what is the island
Mm-hmm.
is always going to be an issue. But it's very clear that this is possible. This is real. This is real.
Yeah, you mentioned that you went to Burning Man 8 years ago, and before you were a bit, if I understood you right, a bit skeptical in a way, and you went there from curiosity reasons?
I didn't believe a word.
Okay, so what made you to go there? Curiosity, or why did you go and what's happened?
The head of the whole thing is a friend of
Okay.
and Marian Goodell, and she told me 4 years in a row that, Tamás, you need to come and you need to see this because this is humanity in action. And I explained to her that this is not real, that I don't believe it. There's a selection bias, and I don't want to go. So, and then one year I was working on inequality regulating institutions. In a way, gender. So the gender book came out of that research as well. And then, okay, this is the time. Maybe I'll go to Burning Man and have a look at the inequality regulating institutions. And then I learned about something completely different, which rewired my science entirely.
Wow. That's strong.
So that was great. I think I agree, this is an educational establishment in which people have fun, people love it because this is our natural behavior. This is why we love it. And if you don't go, you have no idea what it is. and it's
Yeah.
impossible to explain. And we sound like communist commissars spreading propaganda because we've seen it and they haven't seen it,
Yeah.
and they think it's all bullshit.
Yeah, it's just crazy. You just can understand it only the moment you go there, how
Yes.
powerful it is.
The second time I went, I studied people who get excluded.
Excluded from going to the Burning Man, or
No.
being in the playa
Excluded
and then being excluded there?
at the burning.
Okay, and what did you find out?
And so, but my estimate was that out of the 85,000, let's say about 10,000 people are extremely unhappy. Do you know what makes the difference?
Between happy and unhappy, or?
Yeah. Why? Who are the people who are unhappy, who feel excluded in this place of radical inclusion?
Could it be someone who does not have, I don't know, the self-radical reliance or confidence or some kind of belief, or does not have the why?
The why?
The why, I don't know, the why and some kind of mission, contribution, that, I don't know.
They don't give.
They don't give. Okay.
They don't give. They assume that this is a tourist place. So they are tourists. They come and look at the art in the playa, and of course it's peppered with art. But if you don't give, you get bored by this gallery in a day and a half, 2 days. And after that, you have the dust storms, and you have the sunshine, and you have the cold at night and the heat during the day. And it's unpleasant, and people are loud, and a lot of them. So it just doesn't work unless you give. Because when you give, and that can be all kinds of gifts, if you give as part of the camp, or you give, make an art, or build a temple, or you have a personal gift, the bigger your perceived gift is, the psychologically perceived gift is, the bigger the oxytocin release is in your brain when you do this one-sided gift to others. And the bigger the oxytocin release, the happier you feel and the more bonded you get to the whole community. So that's gifting. Unconditional gifting is in a way the key. And if you're not giving, if you haven't figured out, for some reason, you haven't figured out that this is a place to give, then it's just unpleasant. And you are desperate to leave after a while. And you can't leave, so you feel locked up. And you're still not figuring out what to do. And you're just looking at other people being happy. And you are extremely unhappy. So gifting and this bonding mechanism and this oxytocin-based pleasure mechanism that unconditional gifting gives is the key. And that's how you're born. This is why people call it home. And then every year they already plan for next year. What am I going to give next year? Yeah. And then they come and they give. And it's pleasureful to give. And there's a permission to give, of course. So if I start cooking pizza in the middle of Broad Street here in Oxford, people are going to be like, where is your license? And anyway, what do you want from me? There, of course, thank you. Here's a hug. Here's a kiss. Ciao. Yeah.
Very curious.
We do sound like communist commissars spreading propaganda.
That's quite funny because now we somehow started talking about this Burning Man, but I think it's very interesting, right? So your book about the gender species and this whole patriarchy. So how do you see the role of patriarchy within such communities?
I mean, it's very interesting because I wasn't there at the very beginning, but I know many of the founders who are still alive. And those people have been around for a long time. I think this used to be a very patriarchal, not patriarchal, but very male place. So this was like wild games and aggression. So a lot of testosterone based and very male art and very male play. In a way, adult rough and tumble play. That's what it was at the beginning. The drive-by shooting range, when they would have a police car, a remote control police car, and people shot at it. Or one of the camp's gifts was that they would make 100 Molotov cocktails every day, and you would aim. I mean, this was like rough and tumble play. And it was all dominated by quite masculine man. Now, the whole thing changed. The entire leadership, almost the entire leadership, is female. Play changed. I mean, there's always a risk to it. The idea of safety third is still sort of present, but the leadership is much more consensual leadership. The whole leadership pattern changed. So, and many camps have either female leads or very strong female characters, and a feminine leadership structure. So the hierarchy of leadership is rather than this, it's like this. Yeah. So it changes. The whole thing changes from here to sort of here. Yeah. That's the leadership structure. So I think that this changed as well, parallel to our species slowly going through a change as well.
So where are we going now with the species? I'm so curious because I don't know how long you've been researching now. You've been to quite multiple countries, researching for your book about the patriarchy, right? And doing quite some strong work there. So how did this whole patriarchy, for example, emerge as the dominant social structure maybe in many societies? Have you noticed anything?
So I'm a theorist. I work in the overlap of evolution, anthropology, biology, economics, and math. About 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I was working on some inequality models, theoretical models about social inequality. And I realized that every human society will have a very strong inequality pressure automatically. And because of that, it will blow up unless there are some institutions that regulate social inequality. So every society will have a regulation of social inequality. And we thought, you know what, it would be fun to do a catalog of inequality regulating institutions. So there are 6,000 languages, more than 20,000 cultures, depending on how you define a culture. Each culture will have multitudes of ways of regulating inequality. Let's collect it all. And then, if you want to regulate the global society's inequality, there's going to be these are the solutions, a toolbox. Yeah? And while I was working on this, I realized that gender-based inequality is very different from other forms of inequality. Because if you have a class system or a caste system, the different classes or different castes can separate the social network from each other. If you have a ethnicity-based inequality, then they can be just living in different parts of the city or different parts of society, of the country. But gender, because we are a predominantly heterosexual and predominantly pair-bonded species, even if monogamish, the social network cannot separate. So gender-based inequality will be a daily experience. So I got very interested in, so how does this work? And so the first draft of the book was 9 years ago. And while working on a bunch of other stuff, I kept working on this book. So this book is the fifth rewrite.
Oh, wow.
And I think now has something to say around. I think it offers a reframing of our very messy gender debate. In which, so I haven't asked you a question. Where patriarchy comes from? So it seems that our species, if I step back, yeah, and I say, okay, I put our species among our related species. Chimpanzees are patriarchal. Bonobos are matriarchal. These are our two closest related ape species. In fact, the book steps away from defining patriarchy in human terms. Patriarchy is chimpanzee-like because they are so clearly patriarchal. And then our species is probably sort of gender equal, gender harmonious, but with a lot of flexibility. So it seems that we have an anchor in gender equality, but we can make patriarchal societies and we can also make matriarchal societies. But most hunter-gatherer forager societies, as far as we know, were in the past gender equal or gender harmonious. And then with the stabilization of the climate, so 12 to 10,000 years ago, when the last ice age finished, the temperature warmed up, but also became stable. And on the back of that stability, farming appeared, 11 different places, at least on the planet, and every one of those places ended up as a patriarchy. So patriarchy probably emerged 11 different times, 11 different locations, independent from each other. And because it was patriarchal setup of the same ape species, humans, these patriarchies invented very, very similar regulation around sexuality, very, very similar regulation around marriage, these very similar structure or inequality structure or warfare or and so when we look around the planet today, or let's say when we looked around the planet 300 years ago, we would see these empires, civilizations, whatever term you use, which are all patriarchal. So we might have thought that patriarchy is somehow the natural behavior, which it is not. It's a consequence of farming.
Oh, really?
And and then what happens is that as the logic of farming went away with the Industrial Revolution, the logic of the patriarchy is going away as well. But our societies are very, very slow in response. So it takes multiple lifetimes for the whole system to change. So we feel frustrated today because what we feel is that the logic of patriarchy went away while the institutions and the power structures are still patriarchal, which is in a way the point of gender studies. So in a way, the book puts sort of a anthropological behavior ecology foundation to this point. But it's the same.
You
Does it make
mentioned
sense?
it does make sense. It's very interesting. Thank you for us going so detailed through this whole history and just adding up more and more information. It's super interesting. I'm just like, whoa, listening. And you mentioned gender, right? So why do gender norms then vary so significantly across the cultures? And of course, different time periods. Have you managed to research it?
So, I mean, gender norms exist independent of the patriarchal system. Every gender equal forager hunter gatherer society has gender-based division of labor following two different logics. All the matriarchy leaning societies have gender-based division of labor. The only full matriarchy that I would think that is really properly a full matriarchy, this is the Musuo culture in China. They have gender-based division of labor. So if you go to the Musuo culture, and this is a matriarchy, everything is owned by the women. All the decisions are made by the women. There's no marriage. The father of the child doesn't even move in. It's a very different system. This is described in the book. And the women do the raising of the kids. They cook, they sew, they make the clothing, and clean the house. And the men do the fishing, the looking after the animals, and taking the animals far away. So in a way and the hunting. So the women do the patriarchal set of tasks, and the men do sort of what seems like also the patriarchal set of tasks. Exactly, it's a matriarchy. So gender-based division of labor is not dependent on the patriarchy. There are two different logics that drive gender-based division of labor, which drives its presence in forager-hunter, in gender equal forager societies. And once we see that, we can see why that logic is going away today. So I think today is going away partially because our institutions are changing, and partially because the technology changes, and hence the original logic of gender-based division of labor goes away. And it's sort of an obvious, if you are a biologist, there are a set of different factors that would drive naturally in a forager culture the different norms for the genders in a gender equal forager culture. And then this gets completely uprooted by these farming patriarchies as farming patriarchies emerge. So our species is at least 350,000 years old, maybe older, in which, as far as we know, it was gender equal, gender harmonious. And suddenly, the past few thousand years, it became patriarchal. And so the previous gender-based tasks and rules now gave way to patriarchal rules, including rules around sex, rules around raising the kids, rules around network formation, violence, aggression, leadership. They emerged as a consequence of the rise of these farming patriarchies, and that is going away. So
That is it. How do you think that current technological revolution is contributing to that change?
Yeah. I mean, just look at how something that as obvious as fighting. So an average biological male is about 7.8% taller than an average biological female. And an average man is stronger and faster than an average woman. So when it comes to fighting on the battlefield, when the stronger wins, the males will have an advantage. But once you have a sniper rifle, it's not the stronger that wins, it's the better trained or the more talented that wins. So even in behaviors and tasks that would have been obvious male advantage in the past, now they're equaling out. And I think increasingly there's not really, because of this technological change, there's not really anything in which you would expect to see maybe some, I mean, there are very few actual differences between women and men. And they are for the averages, and there's a big individual variation. So in these modern societies, I can't see any reason gender-based tasks where it made sense in the past.
Okay. We talk a lot about in the startup scene about gender equality, about changing the role in the society and to bringing more women, especially into entrepreneurship and predefined investment assumptions. Only like even 2 years back during COVID, I think there was Nordic data released that only 2%, 3% of investments go to the female founders, which is now actually changing. I'm glad to see it. Why do you think we're in the society we're still so much close into our tribal circles where we invest in people who look the same like we do? We hire people who look the same like we do.
So I don't have, I'm a scientist with theory,
Yeah.
so I do generalized answers. But I'm partially present in the same Nordic startup scene as you are. I can't see any reason why female funder would be different than a male funder. I mean, female leadership is a little bit different. So we see that leadership structures are different. Female leadership structures are different from male leadership structures. If you compare, say, Margaret Thatcher to Angela Merkel, yeah, two women. Margaret Thatcher was an archetypal patriarchal leader, and Angela Merkel is an archetypal matriarchal leader or gender equal leader. Yeah. So, and the Margaret Thatcher had very steep hierarchy in her cabinets. Didn't have any women. I mean, there's the only one person who was, only one woman who was in her cabinet was, I think, for 18 months, one woman. Whereas Angela Merkel had, by the end, by her fourth cabinet, it was almost equal. But I think I had a quarter of her cabinet, and even the first cabinet were women. And rather than steep hierarchy, a flat hierarchy. Flatter hierarchy. She was the leader, of course. So I wonder whether leadership models in the startup scene are very male leadership models. So that's one thing I can imagine. And the other one is that, which I've been thinking a lot, is that in the north, there's this sauna tradition. So if I go to Finland and we want to discuss business,
You go to sauna.
we go to have a formal meeting where nothing is going to. And then if they like me, but there's nothing's happening, they say, hey, do you want to come to the company sauna? And we go to the sauna and they say, hey, do you want a beer? And, we have beer, but it's all men. Because there's a tradition of gender-based or sex-based separation of who goes to the sauna. So this would be a tradition which would not be a patriarchal tradition, but would end up with an advantage for the male funders. Because if you want to see, they want to see my metal. Yeah, like they want to see if I'm any good. We would end up in the sauna, but there would be much more. So I wondered about in the Nordic scene, the sauna culture scene, where they are so the role of these kind of traditions in. So these are the two things I can imagine, but I haven't done. This is like some theoretical observations and participant observation applied to the same. But I don't want to answer because specifically for this because I haven't studied it.
Yeah, I was very curious, but thanks for sharing. And quite funny you mentioned sauna. Actually, yesterday I just went to the sauna ceremonial session in Lithuanian Woods. We have this tradition as well here. And I'm going to the tech conference this year after a few years break. And I was talking to one of my friends who is also into the startup scene and the business and tech. And he was like, I told him, yeah, so you actually can go to sauna in Finland. That's where business happens. I was like, and he was like, did you go? I'm like, no, to my knowledge, I haven't attended the sauna business meeting because it's just back then when I joined the startup scene, it was just way too intimidating in a way that you're and then the man. And I'm like, okay, so that's feels like not my territory. I'm not gonna go.
Yep.
So
that might be one of the
could be.
obstacles. It's very interesting because many other things, the North is the most gender equal part of the world, but not in startup funding. So very interesting. Sorry, for a scientist, for you it must be extremely frustrating, but for a scientist, it's an interesting discrepancy.
Yeah.
Because what is driving this? So actually, yeah. So you are in the startup scene. You're a founder.
I'm based in Copenhagen, but been traveling around, and yeah.
And what's your startup?
So right now I do have this kind of media company, or whatever the way you call it. So I'm running this podcast and collaborating with different events and trying to spread out knowledge of the topics that I'm curious, and also underdog founders in general, to bring out someone whom we can relate in Europe. Because usually, the stories we hear out there in public are coming from the US, and it's culturally sometimes different to match the backgrounds they're coming from. So I've kind of thought that we need this platform for underdogs. And yeah, that's what I'm building, and also doing a bit of a scouting for different startups. So just playing around. And
Underdog funding. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I think it's crucial and relevant to create a platform where those voices can be heard, and also to inspire others to hear the stories where they can relate to, especially if some of the people are coming from the C region, which is a completely different background and starting point, from the capital amount to, okay, now it's everything online, it's completely different, but you still kind of can get inspired and take action and connect with the fellow European founders. And I find it crucial.
Cool.
Yeah, go ahead. You wanted to ask something.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, have you been to any of the Kinanet events?
Not yet, but I've been mentioned many times, and actually I almost went to one in Lisbon during the Web Summit, but I have it in my mind. Are you part of the network?
I've been a few times.
You've been a few times, okay. Yeah, but I heard about it, and last time, I don't know, something I could not join, but I know someone who is attending sometimes events, but yeah.
This weekend we are doing a pop-up.
Oh, it's so cool.
So I'm flying back. I'm hosting it. If you happen to be in Budapest, come over.
Not this weekend, but next time. It's easy, one flight.
It's a pop-up. Yeah, it's but so many of my friends complained that the pop-up is too soon, too unplanned.
Yeah.
I think the whole point of a pop-up is that it's unplanned. I started to plan it from the playa, and it's like, because I was playa time. I was like, let's just do a pop-up, and of course, so now we're gonna have one probably in September.
That's amazing.
The Kinanet is gonna be called probably something else.
Okay, that's pretty cool. That's fun. Well, we can always make a collab.
Yeah. But you should, if you can come to Kinanet, I think you would like it. A lot of burners, a lot of Africa-born people in the northern tech scene,
Yeah, that would be really great. So, okay, so the message is out there. Whoever is organizing the next event, I'm open to attend and join. And so I have for you, we're getting closer to the end. I have to do one more question. I think everyone who is interested in general into gender should dig deeper into your book. Yes, I just started it, so I just want to also continue understanding it better. But we always kind of try to understand what's ahead of us, what's the future, how does the future look like? What do you see right now as the biggest challenges and opportunities for progress in the future as a society?
So this book, I will answer, but I should add that this book is not an activist book. It's a science book.
Okay, great.
So we worked very, very hard. My editor, I just worked with her in San Francisco. She's in San Francisco. And we worked very hard. There are no norms left in this, no values. These were, it's just what science says around it. Given that caveat, I think what is happening now is that we are on a very slow shift away from patriarchal systems. And there were 11 different patriarchal systems. There were 11 different patriarchal systems in the past. And I think we are shifting towards one new kind of society, which I think, is moving towards this gender harmonious, gender equal global society, very slowly towards a global democracy, although sometimes it doesn't feel like that. But the data shows this. So the data shows that we are leaving patriarchy slowly. We are slowly moving towards a global democracy. And also it seems that there's going to be a hint of a female advantage. A little bit of a hint. Some areas already have a female advantage. I know. I say this and it is almost like I'm manning myself. It's like, oh, you man, you must be a man. No, it's a scientist who says this. And in some areas already there's a bit of a female advantage. In education, for instance, and the next generations in some cultures. Some countries are further ahead in the transition. Young women have more education than young men. So already there's a change. A bit like in Burning Man, there's a shift towards a somewhat female advantage, but a small one. So I think we are moving very, very slowly towards a gender harmonious global society, which is increasingly democratic with a hint of female advantage. That's where we will end up, I think. I have a word. There's a new word for it. It's called matriarchy.
I literally was thinking, what would be the word for that? And you just answered. I went to that.
So this is volume 1 of the book, and volume 2's, because this is about the logic of the patriarchy, and volume 2 uses the logic to show what's happening today. Exactly your question.
Mm-hmm.
And so the title of that one, so the title of this one is Gendered Species: A Natural History of Patriarchy, and then the title of that next one is matriarchy.
When is it coming live?
Where we are heading. But the glossary of this book already it opens with the word matriarchy. And so I think my assessment is that that's the most likely place where we are slowly going. But, I can cook up other scenarios in which there's a collapse of the biosphere that triggers a giant warfare and a return for low-tech, almost Mad Max-like warring cultures, which were super patriarchal. So there are scenarios, but I think the most likely scenario is we're moving towards something like this, but very, very slowly. So not by year, but by centuries. Multiple lifetime length transition, and we are in the middle of it.
Interesting.
So we are frustrated by the speed of it. So I wrote this book actually, so I had so many moments that I almost gave up the book.
Really?
And I wrote, I don't just try being a white, middle-aged, heterosexual, privileged man and write a book about gender.
That sounds like a challenge itself.
It was a big challenge. Very interesting, actually. Many reasons very interesting. But I think the objective with this book is that knowing what's going on, to the extent maybe the book is right, who knows, maybe it's not right, but knowing what is going on, if the reframing is a good reframing, then can help us speed up the transition process. So that very, very low transition can be made maybe faster by simply understanding what we are doing. That's the objective.
That's a good one. Fair enough. So what made you keep writing the book and not give up while you had those slow moments?
Because it's so crappy to be oppressed. We can't have, it's like if you have a little tool to help, why not use it here? And our species, okay, these are big words, but our species, we're facing at least 4 different existential challenges. And we will not be able to deal with those unless we sort out how to organize ourselves on a global scale. And one of the problems that we must solve for that is the legacy of patriarchal systems.
dropping the mic. So, Tamás, like if you would leave right now, I don't know, the audience with some kind of question to ponder on after this episode, what would it be? It can be a thought, it can be a question, it can be...
I'd like everybody to engage with the book. I'd like everybody to... There's a step one. Write to us if you see examples in your own culture that would fit it. And if you like it, just gift the book to somebody else. Like do Burning Man style gifting. Just give the book. And, I've gifted so many copies of this book. Engage with the book. I think that's the end, and give a chance to this reframing. I think that's right now, that is I think that's what I would ask. And ponder what this speed up, what this framing would mean to the speed up that you are part of, whether it's a global scale or local scale. Or what we want to have is my dream is that this book is in the hand of every high school teacher on the planet, and just basically allow a conversation in grammar schools and secondary schools around, okay, what is patriarchy? What does it mean to be a new kind of male or female set of rules, behavioral rules? That's it.
Amazing. Tamás, thank you so much for doing such a big work and providing us a science approach on the gender and in general where we are going as a society. And I hope that all of us will get inspired and read the book, and that people will get back to you so you can continue your work. And the final question, where can people follow your journey? What would be the best channel?
I'm slowly left Twitter.
Okay.
Links right now, oddly enough, LinkedIn is where I'm active.
All right, so LinkedIn it is. We're gonna leave the links to your LinkedIn, to your book as well. Where do you prefer people to get your book? Is it Amazon or somewhere
Amazon. Right now, it's available on Amazon, so that's the best. If you are listening to this, if someone is listening to this, where Amazon delivers in a lot of different countries, but there's global delivery from the UK site. So if you go to the UK site, just search for gender, species, and natural history of patriarchy, and then just add your address. And I think for an extra £3.50, they will deliver the book anywhere on the planet. And if I may add this, if your budget allows, buy the hardcover. We made it as cheap as possible, the hardcover, because the top of it is a painting by Paolo Troilo. It's a beautiful painting, and obviously the Kindle version just doesn't give back anything. The paperback, but the hardcover it's a gorgeous painting. It's called Bloom, and it's Adam falling from the Sistine Chapel and bursting into flowers.
Is that a representation of transition for patriarchy to I cannot pronounce the word.
Matriarchy.
Matriarchy. Is that what that painting kind of...
Might be. The Matriarchy book has another painting, has a female body on it.
Okay.
So the two will be in pair. Paolo Troilo, amazing Italian painter.
Beautiful.
Who gifted this painting to this book project, which was extremely generous of him, but he's amazing. So anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining Perception Paradox and going into this unknown exploratory conversation. And I think from Burning Man, we've got back into the initial intention to talk a bit about your book and how was it written, what are the major insights. And I'm definitely hooked to finish reading it. So I hope that the rest of the listeners as well. And yeah, I guess see you somewhere around and talk to you maybe for part 2 later on when you progress with your second book. So,
or at Kinnart event or at the Burning Man.
Yeah, you never know. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye.